Hello! Hi, friends! I finally got my stream deck working. Oh, makes me feel so happy. But because of that, I had to completely restart over my OBS once again because this is my life. I just will forever be starting over my OBS. But that's fine. That's fine because it gives me the brain power to do things. So I will take it.
What we like to do?
Oh, that's very quiet.
We talk it through.
Let's turn that up. I'm gonna check some of the other sound alerts and stuff. Maybe.
Hey, where's the beef? I don't think there's anybody back there.
And this old Zorpus hair is grumpy.
Okay. Doesn't sound too bad. How's my microphone? Grumpy, first go, fast go, first go, fast go, Grumpy. Good job, Grumpy, you did it.
You do speak. And all this time I thought you were just a big, wild, quiet, silent person thing. Why didn't you tell me? I mean,
And by okay, you mean, sounds great. Thank you, Grumpy. So I want to say hi to Arrow, and to Albie, and to Amethyst, and to Shoshi. Hello, hello, my friends. I love you all so much. How are you doing? How was your Wednesday? It is Wednesday. It's Wednesday. How was your Wednesday? How did it go? What were you up to? What did you do today? I spent most of the day working on the YouTube video for our Free Bleed soap. And so that was really good and is now up for folks on Patreon and will be I know, Arrow, I saw that and I was just like, wait, is tomorrow Friday? Did I lose a whole nother day? How did that happen? I wasn't ready. Oh my god, do you see Lurk? Do you see her rolling about? Hang on. God. Look at her. Look at this queen. Do you see her? She's laying. She's resting. She's chilling. You had a meeting and then food pantry and then work and now relax. It's very good, very good. Okay. Is she fine just laying? Are you gonna keep rolling? She was literally rolling around like a dog. And now she's not. Of course. The moment that I go to show you all. Okay. I feel like it's gonna happen. Oh. Okay. So I am seeing a weird thing that keeps happening that I don't really know how to deal with. Is that, what is this? My like I have like a little button for the Patreon thing, the sub off Twitch thing, and it keeps like disappearing, which feels strange to me, but sure, it's fine. Okay, here it is. She did that the other day and I was initially concerned that she got up and ran about a bit. Oh yeah, she just likes to roll around. Sometimes you just gotta roll around a little bit. Sometimes you just want to do a little roll. I mean, I get it. Sometimes well, actually, no, I don't roll around because I'm old. Like, I don't have the ability to do that. No, I do not. Oh my goodness. But yes, Grumpy, how was your day? I didn't get a chance to check in with you when you got home because I was trying to just finish up. You can see the mess behind me. Hi friends, welcome back to my messy garage for more games and cozy chaos. Tiny Totes is all about it. Oh, I love that. Oh, goodness. Yeah, I really like when Lark rolls around like a big horse. Because I just think that she secretly just wants to be a horse, and I don't blame her, honestly. Like, if I could be a horse, no, I wouldn't be a horse. That would be not for me. Mm-mm. Oh my goodness. Well, Albie, I hope that everything today was good, and I'm glad that you get to relax. How are you taking care of yourself? Did you have dinner? I did not do as good with my eating today, but I did eat food till I was full at a point today. That was not that long ago. So I am not hungry now. I swear I'm gonna do better at it. I'm working on it. I think it's just a matter of like, I need to figure out ways. I don't know if any of you other folks with like ADHD or neurospiciness have this, but I have to figure out ways to like have food that I can eat while I'm hyper focused. Because sometimes I'm hyper focused on a show, and so then it's really easy to eat food because like my hands are free. But if I'm video editing or writing, like my hands are busy. Maybe, okay, so wait, maybe what I need is just to that's not good. That's not a good plan. That's not what you should do. Don't anyway. You got dinner, now you're watching me and Scoops TT Live. Ooh, very fun. Day was okay, training was a waste of time. I hate how everything that's certified is changing and it's stupid. It sounds like at least after this first day of the training that we had to do for new employees will be a lot more work. Well, but like that's totally valid. That's totally valid. And frustrating and stressful, and I'm sorry that that was poopy, but now you're home and the goats are being lazy. I only had to chase one of the neighbor boy goats out of the girl yard once today, so that was good. And he hasn't gone back in, but he will try. Hi Raven, how are you? How is your Wednesday? Look at you, you're just a little orange goat, which is interesting. So I wouldn't imagine you as an orange goat. But we do have an immense amount of purple goats already. I wonder what that says about our... And that's why I look up and I just see Lark just like fully just having a blast. She's just the happiest girl. She's just the happiest girl. Oh my goodness. Well, I hope everyone's been having like a good week. I mentioned it in Discord, but basically since the beginning of August, my meds have sort of been messed up, like, which is really frustrating when you find meds that work for you and you have like all the right combo and everything's going right, and then because pharmacies and gobbledygook, you can't get your meds and you can't get them for 2 months. And so it's like, no wonder I've been having some weird brain things just in terms of like sleep and stuff. And so I'm excited to finally have all my meds. And it's been a weird day for you too, but I'm glad that you're getting work done. I think, and I don't want to get too much into stuff today, but one thing I will say is I've been watching The Handmaid's Tale, like the newest season that just started. There are 3 episodes in, and I really love that show, but I just don't know if I can watch it right now. It reminds me of when I had a friend who was from Idaho, and like I knew her like acquaintance like gosh, right around the time Napoleon Dynamite came out. And I hadn't seen it yet, but everybody was talking about it. I think it was like 14 or 15. It was like really cool. And like so I hadn't seen it yet. And so she had said, yeah, I didn't like it. And I was like, oh, was it just like not funny? Or was it like that awkward humor? I struggle with that awkward humor. And Marlo!
Hello Marlo, just resubscribed for 14 months. Hi Ellie, but I can't hear you right now. The grocery store is too loud. But 14 months BB. Wahoo.
Wahoo! I love you, Marlo. Marlo cannot hear me, but I can type in the chat to them and tell them that I love them. Also, friends, if you do not know, I'm assuming Marlo probably has done a, like, previous, like, long-term sub, because Marlo loves me and is very kind. But, I am pushing for the, like, once your, like, time or whatever ends, like, let's start pushing things off Twitch. Because it's a great platform. It's great to use for streaming. You know what else is? Like, apparently I can stream on Patreon. Like, so it's great for building community and growing community and meeting new friends and all of that, but it's, like, not great to its creators. Surprise. And I'm just, like, really struggling to give Amazon more money, and I give them more money than I want to pretty regularly. And so, I will be pushing more towards the Patreon versus subbing or bits on Twitch, just because with Patreon, besides a few credit card fees, like, you know where your money's going. And with Twitch, we don't know where our money's going. It's going somewhere. It's not to creators. At least not the majority of us. So anyway, I was also talking about something else, but I got distracted by Marlo. Okay. Oh, you will come throw poop at them? Yes. Oh, I'm sorry, Grumpy. I missed more of your work stuff. Let's see. Changes sound very white and privilege focused. Little consideration for natives and two-spirit people, two groups that I belong to. Their defense is that they are just using the same demographics as the US federal government. Ooh. But I have a lot of questions about that, Grumpy, and I think we should talk more about it soon, because, like, I would like to look over it and see, because that doesn't make sense, because it's not just federal government that sends them grants and money, it's also the state, and our state has a lot of language around multiple populations of people, particularly folks who are indigenous to this area or to Americas, and so well, throw in poop, throw in poop. Can we get some poop in the chat for the certifier at Grumpy's work? Can we get some poop? Poop, poop, poop in the chat at Grumpy Certifier, because they're rude. Well, and for so many other reasons, but. And see, that doesn't make any sense. That's so interesting. I always wonder why nonprofits just want to, like, not exist anymore, because they're gonna lose people that way. And they're gonna lose, well, they're gonna lose people that they're serving that way, which I guess maybe that is the point. Anyway, this is supposed to be cozy, not ranty. I'm gonna try to hold off. I haven't ranted at all today, so that's probably why. But what I want to do instead, friends, maybe, where's the button? There's the button. To play some wildflowers. So a little, like, background, or a little background I know of the game. So I started following wildflowers on TikTok. I don't even know how long ago. It feels like it's been a long time. And I put it on my Steam wish list what felt like a very long time ago. And so I've been, like, getting to see, I think that there are a lot of folks who are cozy game developers who are using TikTok because they realize that, oh, hey, this is where my people are. Hello. We're here. We're on TikTok. Too much, really. Honestly. But so I've been, like, seeing clips and things and, like, and following them, and so I've been super excited. And then last night, hi Dominga, how are you? How are you, my friend? How is your day? Look at you go. Somewhere. And so I'll be commented my name on, like tagged me in a comment on one of their posts talking about needing playtesters who are streamers who can stream while they play, but also can, like, note bugs and things that might need fixes, because it's still in early access, but it is available now on Steam and Switch, I think. And so I, like, commented, and I was like, I would love a free game that I've been wanting for months. And so They gave me a key. So like not sponsored, but also I got it for free. And so that's exciting and fun because it feels fancy. I know, I'm really excited. Okay. Take a sip of water. Oh no. Okay. New game. Let's see. Let me know how the... Oh, I might need to... Okay, you should be able to hear everything. Let me know how the volume is. Fairhaven Town. Oh, that's cute. Everybody's so cute. Who is this guy? Is he the mayor? He looks like a real estate agent. Not sponsored, but it was a free access, so kind of... Well, like, it's one of those things, like, they don't pay me to say anything, but... I don't know. It's always... Oh, there is a rainbow flag! Rainbow flag at Town Hall! Pride flag, pride flag. And that lady's holding a goat. Okay, this feels very on brand. This is cute. I like that there's a goat statue. Does that mean that... Wait, because I know, like, the idea is that we farm during the day and then we're witches at night. I don't have a goat statue, but I have this guy that once I finish putting together my stream area, Potato got him for me. So he's not like a big statue, but I love him.
Excuse me, would you happen to know the way to Hazel Wylde's farm?
Tara? Oh my goodness, it really is you, isn't it?
Lena? I haven't seen you since I was tiny. It's good to see you again.
I heard you were coming to stay with your grandma Hazel. Now,
The
do
voice
you
acting
remember
is
the
so
way?
cute.
No. I don't remember much from that time.
No problem. Go up the stairs
We
behind
do, Grumpy, we do.
me and turn left at the top. Then just follow your nose till you get to Hazel's house.
Go up the stairs behind you, then turn left and follow the path.
Yeah,
Got
I
it.
didn't expect it either. Well, because, like, when you think about, like... Because this game is very much, like, Animal Crossing or, like... I think what made me start following them was that it was Harvest Moon, but not homophobic. And way cuter. And I was like, yeah. And so I was expecting there to actually be voice acting.
Hey, but, I'm not a bro.
I'm a bro.
My name's Kai. Check it out. This is my kiosk. I'm here, you know, whenever. It's like a pop-up shop. I only sell the most killer stuff I
like
find
Kai.
off island. Take a
He's
look.
so cute.
But like I say, if you fall in love with something, better get it now. The merchandise is just whatever feels right in the moment. You know?
I like Kai.
Okay.
Let's see what Kai has to sell. Do we have money? We have money. Should I save money? I guess... Wait. So all of this is out of stock, so I can buy a singular olive for 40. I have 50. Harvest season or Harvest Moon or Story of Seasons. Oh goodness gracious. But yeah, so I don't really know if I want to spend all my money on cinnamon chocolate or like 2 bars of cinnamon, 2 pieces of chocolate, or a singular olive. Those are very cool treasures, Kai. Okay, let's go find some other people. Can we go in here? What's this? Wylde General Store. 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Wednesday. Okay. What time is it now? I have no idea. Matt? Well, you still make the tiny goats fart. We just don't have to suffer the gross noises. Like, I don't mind their little toots on the screen. I think that's cute. It's the, like, constant barrage of wet fart noises from this sound alerts that I just cannot handle. Okay, so this is where we are. Cute! This is a lot more than I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be more, like, mobile game style. But this is... I'm excited. You know... Local butcher and deli. Am I supposed to be doing something particular? To Grandma's house I go. Okay. So eventually going northwest. What's this? The bar. The bar. A cure for what ails you. Oh, I wish Yasmin was here. Oh my goodness. So Dominka, do you want to hear the ridiculous goat stories that we're dealing with, or maybe Grumpy could type it in the
And
chat
who is
of
this
like
beautiful creature I see?
our neighbor goats.
I'm Tara, Hazel's granddaughter.
Hazel told me her granddaughter was coming to town, but didn't mention that she was so lovely.
Hello.
Thanks.
I'm Amira, the doctor here in Fairhaven.
A doctor?
I think I've gotten a
Amira?
bit turned around.
Amira, the
Do
doctor?
you know the way to my Grandma Hazel's
Hello?
house?
I do. Head up these steps, past the clock tower, and take a left when you get to the giant bell.
So basically what they're doing is they are actually fully jumping over not just their, like, the neighbor fence and into our property and hanging out with our boy goats, but they're also jumping the girl yard fence and trying to impregnate our girls. I know, I'm all about flirty doctor. I like this kitty. Kitty, be my friend.
Who's a good kitty?
Luckily, the only girl that they've gotten, so I'm pretty sure, because they're, like, and
such
then,
a pretty girl.
because they're doing it now, yeah, it's just been bad. So I think that the only girl that maybe neighbor goats got
such a
was
good
Lart, because she's the tallest and they're also tall, so, like, that would be the worst thing, but, like, how many times can I pet this cat?
Oh, such a good cat.
When does this cat become mine?
Listen to that purr.
Here, kitty, kitty, kitty.
Here, kitty, kitty.
Yeah, well, so to be fair, what happened was, neighbor had an older, dam, so she was like 7 or 8 when we moved in, and, like, she escaped,
Oh, I think I've gotten a bit
I got
turned
turned around.
around. Do you know the way to my Grandma Hazel's
yeah,
house?
so she, like, broke out
I
of
do.
her fence
Head up these
last
steps,
fall.
past the clock tower,
Yeah, okay, I know.
and
then, broke into the boy yard and got herself pregnant, and then she was old, and I told them, like, yeah, neighbor is reasonable. The problem is neighbor is single and older and, like, wasn't really expecting to have baby goats, right? And so, I've been chatting with her a little bit here and there, just be like, hey, so maybe it's time to, like, because I don't think she wants them, but I don't think she knows how to find them a home. And so I've told her that I would help her. Oh, hi, kitty.
Hey there, kitty.
I'm obsessed with the kitty. Like, we have the same eyes. Wait, is Tara secretly the kitty? These are the questions. But yeah, and so, like, now that, like, we've been here for a year and stuff, she's finally warmed up a little bit. I think she's just, like, old hermit lady. And she just lives her old hermit life, and that's great. And I'm happy for her. But I need her goats to stay out of my yard.
Hey, I'm Tara.
Oh, the new girl. I'm Francis. Ashante.
Oh, you speak French?
Well, no. I speak Spanish, though. Bienvenidos to our little seaside pueblo.
Gracias. I think I've gotten a bit turned around. Do you know the way to my Grandma Hazel's house?
You're nearly there. It's just down that third path, opposite the giant bell.
Okay. So those people are placed there to keep me from going where I go. What's this? Blacksmith. Natalia. Is my grandma the blacksmith? Grandma, are you the coolest? You don't look like my grandma.
Hello there. Nice to see a new face around here.
Hi. I'm Hazel Wylde's granddaughter, Tara.
Oh, Hazel was so kind to me when I first moved here. Used to
I
let
mean,
me
there's
cut
like
through a
10
property to get to
people in
the
the
old
town.
mine. Of course, that was before the
If there's
supports
10
and the
people in the
entrance
town and
gave
Grandma
up.
Hazel's lived there
There's
the
still
whole
a bit of work down
time.
there, I suspect.
Or
She might be the oldest person in town.
Sorry, I didn't introduce myself. I'm Natalia, and I own the blacksmith.
Man,
I can melt
Natalia's
down ore
really
into
cool.
ingots
I
and
wanna be
upgrade
a
any of your farm tools
blacksmith.
for you.
Cool. It's kind of, I was like talking about my friends who moved to Ohio and bought like a historical house. They didn't like, it wasn't like it was super expensive or anything. They just like were the only ones to buy it. And but now because they owned that particular house, everybody in town knows who they are. And so this town is even smaller than that. Grumpy, I feel like I am Tara. Clearly. I don't know my way around. I get distracted constantly. Look at my grandma. Grandma's tough. She's getting her well water.
Blasted rusty old crank. Huh. I ought to blast you. not a bad idea, actually. My charm will bind, turn, and unwind.
Let's go, witchy grandma.
Ah, look at it go.
Why
Grandma?
didn't she just do that before, though?
Oh, it's you. Oh,
She's got
my
purple,
little
like her
honeybee.
headband and her hair tie match her jacket.
I'm
I mean,
not
that's good
so
coordination.
little anymore, Grandma.
No, I suppose not. I'm so glad you've come.
Me too. How can I help out around here? I don't know much about farming, but maybe you can show me the ropes.
Well, now that you mention it,
Mhm,
I
true.
haven't
That makes
got
sense.
the
Hello.
spring crop
Oh, look,
of
we got a tiny
potatoes in
goat here.
yet.
Hi,
Let
tiny
me help,
goats.
Grandma.
I'm
Why don't
trying
you
to
give me those
see.
seeds and
I know, you
can
don't
get
see
them
right now. I'm
planted?
playing the
That
game.
would be a good start. Here's the
I
seeds.
can see it on deal.
Just head over to
A
one
farming
of the
thing where they don't
garden
kill your
beds
grandpa
there
is shocking.
and
It's
scatter
true.
them
Normally
about.
it's like you're going and inheriting grandpa's house. But don't jinx it, Dominka. What if they kill my grandma now?
What is
I know, because Dominka said that. Could you believe that?
the camera?
Well, this lady. From bud to spud, plant the potato seed in the garden bed by the farm. I will plant.
If your grandma tells you what to do,
You're a
Yes,
natural.
Peter, I say hi.
Now you'll need
Grumpy,
to
have
water
a good
them if you
lurk.
want them to grow.
Gumpy was already walking.
I know, but
you
they're
can
gonna
fill
go
it up
talk
at
to
this
Peter now.
old well.
From bud to spud, plants
Dad.
need to be watered every day to grow. Fill up the watering can at the well.
Mom, can I type
Um,
telling you where to go?
My watering can is already full.
but I'm following the instructions. But I gotta. Why would let me? I haven't played.
There now. That should do it. They'll
Yeah.
take a few days to grow, but it's a start. Oh, and I was thinking
Well,
about
we'll have to
cooking
see.
up
We're doing
some
the introduction
mushrooms.
stuff.
How would
Mushrooms.
you like mushroom soup for dinner?
Mushrooms, mushrooms.
Is it the same one you used to
Mushroom
make when I was
pancake.
little?
Mu-
Because
Mushroom
if it is,
pancakes?
yes, please.
Lovely. You'll find
Oh,
plenty of
demons eat
mushrooms
mushroom
good
pancakes.
for eating
Okay,
if
that's
you
good to
head
know,
up
I guess.
that
Oh, thank you.
mountain
Hey, no
path a
biting.
little.
Wait, we have to pick the mushrooms ourselves?
No, this isn't the city, honeybee. Besides, freshly picked mushrooms taste
No, please
better.
don't bite.
Yeah, if they're not the kind that poison you.
You'll do just fine.
I'll do my best. Is there anything else I can do for you?
Oh, I ask you kind
Well,
of
if you wanted to get some new seeds in town, it might be a good time to stop
Attack
by
my mama.
and see the mayor.
Attack.
Introduce yourself.
Attack.
He's at
Attack.
town
I just moved in. I
hall,
have to go
A
introduce
a big
myself to the
building in
mayor.
the center of town with a
Attack.
flag above the
Attack.
door.
I
You can't
actually I
miss
have
it.
met the mayor
I'll
here.
take good care of
Attack.
you
But he-
and this farm, Grandma.
I'm
And his
just
life is
so
ruined.
glad
Is
you're
this
here.
attack?
Yeah, you are
Sweet little
attacking. I would
honeybee.
prefer if you would stop though.
No.
All right,
Oh.
here I am,
Hmm.
farming.
Never
This
until
place has
you
changed so
know
much.
what I want.
It'll take a lot of work to get back to how I remember.
woman.
I don't know if city life has prepared me
Want
for this,
to
but
not
I'm ready to
the
give it my
mayor.
best.
Raise your hand that you don't want to walk to the main.
Achievement unlocked. This isn't the city. From bud to spud, wait for your potato plant to produce potatoes.
No.
The fungus among us. Grandma has asked for mushrooms in order to make something tasty.
Mushroom
The most
pizza, mushroom pancakes.
pine cakes.
Yes.
The most elaborate icebreaker. Meet the mayor at town hall in the center of town. Okay. Do I have? Probably need to find mushrooms. Yeah. Okay.
No, you need to plant the mushrooms in your head.
Well, in my head, I do not want fungus in my head. That is like not a place for it to be. Oh, so cute. Can I pick this up?
Pick a flower. Pick a flower up. That's so cute.
I don't know if I can. Yeah, I don't think I can pick the flowers up.
But can you pick up rocks?
This one I can. There's a mouse.
A mouse?
There's a bunch of mice.
Can you pick up the mouse?
I'm gonna make them my friends. Mice friends. Mice friends. Mice friends.
I see you found the barn.
Oh, this is the
This
barn.
is it? I went looking for it, but I wasn't sure.
No, that's her grandma still.
That's for Yeah.
Look how cute. I love the
Remember the
mice. I love how they're drawn. They're so
milked
cute.
Bessie and she
Hello.
kicked over the milk
Like, I
bucket.
see you.
I hid in the
Eat.
barn because I thought you would be mad.
Does that mean a no?
I would prefer
no
not to be
use
crushed if you
crying
would please
over
stop.
spilled milk.
Okay, well,
Or
I
I...
mean, I cuss
barn that got
people.
You crush
blown
people?
down in
Okay,
a
I'm gonna give you
storm, I
5 more minutes
suppose.
of crushing,
I had
and
to
then it's
give
gonna
up
be all
keeping
over, okay?
cattle.
So does that mean
Head up,
this
please.
is...
Thank you.
Yeah,
No,
the
my hair
chicken
will
coop.
go
Oh,
down.
the
After
chicken
Merlin
coop.
passed, I didn't have a dog to guard the chickens, and they
Aw.
kept getting picked off.
That's so
I
sad.
chopped up the coop for firewood.
Oh,
Oh,
that's a
Grandma.
shame.
Why hasn't anyone
Do
been
you
helping
think we could
Grandma
restore
on this
them?
farm?
I'm sure we could, but after that old ranch closed up,
Why are
the
you
nearest
tooting on
place
me?
to get more animals is
Roll
miles
today.
away. If Mayor Otto
lot
would
of tooting
bestir
happening.
himself to do something about that, then
Never
fixing
said
up
the
these
goatees.
buildings would be light
You don't
work for
nibble
Parker.
like the goatees.
Mm.
Nibble you like the goats.
Okay, so the goats can't listen to me as good as you can. Could you not nibble on me? Mouse friend.
They do not chew my...
Oh, it's very stinky. There's so many toots. Why are there so many toot stinks?
Ma!
No.
Ma! Ma! These are enemies to people.
Trees is and oh trees? How do I can I change?
You eat pea, you eat pea,
I don't-
and then people.
Okay. Hey honey. I feel like you're at an energy level that I just am not able to muster today. And I am kind of like
Master me.
this is what I mean.
Master
I
me.
heard cheese is the enemy of people. That is
Master
according
me.
to Tiny Toad.
Master me.
Okay.
You said master me.
Yeah, so
Does that mean I attack monster?
you're not mustard. Muster means like so what I'm trying to tell you, Sweet Pea, is you are very silly. But I am trying to have like quiet, restful, cozy time. Mushroom.
I will eat that mushroom up in your head.
Why?
Mushrooms be eat up in your veins.
In my brain. Okay. Well, so honey bun. I would love for you to be out here and hang out with me, but hey, are we hearing me?
Yes.
Okay, what did I just say?
No. Mushrooms will be able to attack. So you walk, pick it up.
So what I was saying, sweetie, is mommy right now is not having super wild time, right? I'm having like chill, cozy time, rest time.
This is not cozy pie.
Well,
It does not warm me up. So I will eat your sword. Ma, I will eat the baby and you sword up.
Okay. Well, as much as I appreciate that, I am going.
I'm biting my own pants.
Okay, do you need? I'm not quite sure what you are needing.
Hey, I remember this mine.
Oh,
It
and
looked
there's a
way
mine,
less run down when I was
farming,
7.
chickens,
But so did everything
a
around here.
mine. Everything we could need.
No, you don't need it, or you will eat the gems up.
Mmm.
You can eat the gems up and attack the gems.
Okay. Mushrooms.
Eat the gems up. Mom, can you be able to pick that butterfly?
I don't know if I can get that butterfly. I don't think so. No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want butterfly hidden to eat it up with soup.
You want to
It's a
eat the
collapsed
butterfly with
mine
soup?
shaft.
Yes.
Looks like I can't get into it until it's fixed.
Okay.
Butterflies.
How was school today?
Bad
Bad and good. You want to tell me about it?
and no.
Oh, this danger. This bridge has been declared
Yes.
unfit for use. Okay.
Yes, I want to tell you.
Okay, I'm listening.
Someone was not being nice to me.
Oh no.
Not my feet.
I'm not gonna smell your feet, but what happened? Did you talk to them about how they were making you feel?
No, because they told me that I would not be good, but I was.
Oh, so they thought that you weren't doing what you were supposed to, but you were?
Fish, some fishy.
I don't have a fishing pole yet.
Hey, then I will eat the fishy for soup.
Okay. My oldest came in and was like, that kid kind of looks like me. I love that to me.
This kid?
Yeah, probably.
That kid looks like me. No, Tyler looks like me.
Oh, Tyler looks like you. That's cool.
Did that tell you are even on the floor?
Okay, so it's like mountain and then my house and then town, not city. Okay, so we need to find the mayor.
How is this? I'm not attacking you.
This is great. If you could just like hang, like, I would love it if you wanted to. Oh, I just jumped that fence. Wait.
Ta-da!
Oh.
Ta-da! 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 Can everyone see me up here?
I am sure they can.
Ta-da! Ta-da!
But what I was saying, sweetie, is I want you to hang out here with me, but I'm going for a little bit more of like cozy, comfy feel for my time right now. That's good. Are you giving me a foot massage? Are you gonna learn how to do a shiatsu? And then you could walk all over people whenever you want. Well, not whenever you want, but whenever they pay you.
I will pay for butterflies.
Oh. Take the mushrooms to grandma. Okay. Well, it's on
Pay for butterflies.
Oh, okay.
You should pay me for butterflies.
Oh, so if I want a massage, I have to pay for my massage in butterflies? Is that what you're trying to tell me?
Yeah.
I don't have any readily available butterflies though. How?
Eat them.
What? That doesn't seem like a good idea. Grandma's bed is right next to the front window. Okay.
Wait. Pay for money.
Oh, points. Okay.
Gold as well as you have them.
Oh my gosh, that was so loud in my face. That is, nope. Okay. I'm gonna take a quick break. I think I need to go to the restroom.
Me too.
Yeah, I think you really need to go to the restroom. Friends, we're gonna save, maybe? Can I save? I'm just gonna pause. I think this should be okay. I didn't, well, no, I smelled them the whole time. Anyway, we're gonna do a quick BRB.
Okay. BRB, attack mama, BRB.
And we're gonna go talk about what we're gonna do and if it's Tiny Tots' bedtime.
No, it's not.
Friends, please make sure to get up and stretch. If it's not 10 a.m., but if it is your time for medication or time to wiggle your body, now it's time I see you. Okay, we'll be right back.
Ow!
Okay. That is cute. Why is that so cute? Very short. What happens when I crouch? Am I so little?
Yeah, you're very little.
Now I can climb.
You're doing a little squat.
What is this? Is it supposed to be, is that her tail? Okay, wait. Why can't I choose a tail that is not like that? Yeah. Check them out. They are wonderful. They're incredible. Oh my god, I just got attacked by a whiteboard. Hang on. That was so scary. What? Okay. I'm hopping. I'm just a shark in the woods. Rolling around. Totally normal behavior. Doing a lot of stuff. A lot of stuff. Oh my god. Egg, look at, okay.
Sorry, I got scared.
I just like, I switched to the next camera and there you are. Just like hunched in the doorway.
Hi, how are you?
And I'm clipping it. Women are fine, but fourth dimensional girls with non-Euclidean geometry are smoking hot. They've got curves I can literally get lost in. Oh my gosh.
Stuff in there? Yeah.
Oh shoot. Oh my god! It is Santa! Why is it Santa? No, scary Santa! Why? Wait, do I have my camera?
It's a zombie Santa.
Oh,
He's singing. He was like...
I got a picture of a ghost.
We might have to get a big old house in this. Hello, we are. I'm Hattie. And
yeah, I think
Mama
it's
is
like,
with her home, and I'm and now I'm also out.
Oh, and now I'm the goat. Rainbow house for our Cindy day. Rainbow house. Okay, I think we're back. I feel bad. But I told Tiny Totes, I was just like, honey, this is not the energy that I have right now. Like, I am often really into like laughing and playing and like climbing all over and all of the fart jokes. Obviously that's our brand, but it was just like, nope, that was, I love her so much and I just want her to be mad at me, but sometimes you just need a little break. Okay, can I give you these mushrooms, Grandma?
Ah, spring is the time when the earth reawakens. You can forage for the gifts
Also,
the
thank you
land
guys for those
offers up.
posts. I really appreciate you.
If you know where to look. Have you found any mushrooms?
Will these work?
I found a bunch of mushrooms.
Those are nice, plump ones. You're a natural forager.
Let's go.
When I was out searching, I came across that old mine. You used to tell me that there were goblins inside, remember?
I told you that, did I?
It was a smart way of keeping a curious little girl out of danger.
I can imagine this being really fun on the Switch, too.
Clean through. Shame. I'm sure there's still perfectly good iron and copper down there. Come back tomorrow and I'll have the mushroom stew prepared. I'm a bit tired just now.
The fungus among us. Grandma is making something out of the mushrooms. Okay, let's see. Oh my god, it's like bedtime. Did I check on my potatoes? 5 days. Is this my house?
And can you wake up my little baby?
You know, I don't think I've been in here since your grandpa died.
She is.
Sorry, I was just looking around like you said. I didn't mean to pry.
No, it's fine. I just wasn't as good with my hands as he was. He gave most of his tools
My little one.
to Thomas, since I knew he'd put them to good use. You know, if we want to get this place up and running, though, we'll need to put in the work here, too. We always made a whole lot more money from his crafts than just the farm produce alone. If you ever want to try your hand at it, I kept the blueprints to all his tools right here.
I'm ready.
Thanks, Grandma. Not sure if I'm a handy
I don't have to
Tara,
go into
but
debt.
I'll try for us.
I don't have to inherit anything? Okay, let's see. Ooh. Paper press. Candle maker. Okay. So... but it doesn't tell me how to make an axe. I mean, I guess there is an axe. Where do I sleep? Where's my bed? So this is Grandma's house. Am I supposed to sleep at Grandma's house? I'm gonna go inside Grandma's house. Grandma. Oh, okay. So that's Grandma's bed. This is my bed. Yes. I love the kitchen. It's my aesthetic. Raven. Tiny Totes has started watching Teen Titans Go. I think mainly because I was watching Harley Quinn and she was like, this is a little bit too grown up for me. And so she started watching Teen Titans Go. And now she's like, can you watch Teen Titans Go with me? And I was like, but I guess I can. Even though it's not my fave. It's fine. It's just, you know, dumb brain humor, but okay, how are your
brought
mushrooms?
us some extra milk while you were out, so I made us a delicious mushroom soup sure to warm our bellies.
And you're,
She gave me
you're
soup
sure
in
it
a
had the right
bag,
number of
though.
gills or whatever? We're not going to start seeing things or frothing at the mouth.
Oh no, if I gave you something that made you see things, it'd be on purpose.
Grandma!
I'm just kidding, honeybee.
Let's go, Grandma.
Now, I have another chore for you that would be a great help if you don't mind.
Of course, Grandma. What is it?
Some wood for the fire would be nice. Nights are still cold in the spring around here. Could you go and find a couple of the big old logs lying around the farm, chop them up for me, and bring me the wood?
Yeah.
Sure thing, Grandma.
Let's go chop some wood.
You'll need
Chop,
this
chop, chop.
to get started.
Chop, chop, chop. Task complete. You have been rewarded with mushroom soup. Oh, click on the icon. Cream of mushroom soup. Mushroom soup made from Grandma's recipe. A great way to top up your energy. Can also be sold to Sophia. Cool. Hooray. Wouldn't you know it, Grandma? I really like all the puns. I think it's cute. It's like, it's cute and it's also not Animal Crossing fishing up a bass. I traumatized. Okay. Thanks, Grandma. So I need to eat this. Just shot. Okay. Great. Let's go. I love that Grandma just hangs out by the fire. Let's go, Grandma.
Don't forget to water those potatoes every day.
Oh, good reminding, Grandma. This is why all my plants die. Oh, there's a man here. Water. Okay, and then potatoes.
Hi there, I'm Parker, Lena's husband. How you settling in?
I'm getting there.
I hear you. I moved here from the city myself 10 years ago.
Oh. How long did it take you to feel comfortable here?
I'll let you know. Lena's busy right now, so I wanted to show you the way to the general store. It's really important for anyone running a farm because she can buy all your produce and sell you new seeds. It'll be hard to make ends meet if you can't sell your goods. I'm heading there now if you want to tag along.
Yeah.
Yes, that would be fantastic. I get turned around in town sometimes.
Great.
I just wander.
Follow me.
I don't think that man is comfortable yet. No. Well, I think that's the joke, right? Is the, I'll let you know. Because, I mean, it's honest. It's honest, at least. Oh, blacksmith is open. I need to go, okay. Can you just walk faster? Parker. Oh, let's see. There we go. Pretty good spin. Oh, oh God. Who's this person?
Hey, how's it going?
Damon.
I'm Damon. You're Hazel's granddaughter, yeah?
How did you guess?
You got the same eyes. They say, I'm beautiful, but I don't suffer fools.
I'll take that
That
as
was a weird compliment.
I run the bar. Stop by for good vibes and a sympathetic ear any old time.
Yeah, thanks.
Awesome. Oh, hey, Bruno.
We don't
Damon,
talk about
I want to settle
Bruno,
up for last night. Sorry I didn't have it on me at the time.
That's all right. I know you were good for it, but, thanks.
Fish just haven't been biting lately. But I got Otto to float me for a week.
I wish you hadn't told me that. Your son already has it out for me, Bruno.
That's not so. He's just a teetotaler is all. And who's your new friend here? Guten Tag.
So
You're
Bruno's
Hazel's
son
granddaughter,
doesn't
aren't
like
you?
the bar.
Yes.
Very
Are
cute
you
baby.
German? And also psychic?
I'm Bruno. Don't actually speak much of my native tongue, but I try to keep up some traditions. And you're just a picture of your grandma when she was a girl.
I am?
Yeah! She was a real spitfire back then, too. Hasn't changed much. I see you met Damon. Tara, watch out for this boy. He's trouble.
Hey, I'm trying to make a good first impression here. Do you mind?
I do like all the Hawaiian shirts. Okay. Oh, I lost my person. We're going to the general store? That's an ice cream shop. Map. What is this? League of the Conscious Mind. Meetings are from 10 to 12 on Sundays. Well, this is sus as F. Hello?
Welcome to the island. I am Messenger Cameron Connor.
Hey.
As one newcomer to another, please let me know if there's anything I could do to help.
I lost my escort. I got distracted. Whose house is this? Oh. Oh. Can I go in? Hello? Apparently not. Apparently that is not a thing I can do. Let's see. Oh, there's a cemetery. Birds. Can I read these? And then up this way. Oh, there's a little man. A little man. Yeah, I also think Floopy. Old man.
Hi, I'm Tara. I just moved to town.
You look just like I pictured.
I'm sorry, what?
Oh, being Hazel's granddaughter, I mean.
Oh, and you are?
Been many things, but if it's a name you're looking for, folks here call me Shelby.
Okay. Shelby sells scraps and sundries. He's very sus, but I'm gonna buy stuff from him because they're very cheap. Okay. Okay. Goodbye, Shelby. You scare me. Look at this person! She's got purple hair. No.
Oh my gosh, you
Violet!
gotta be Tara!
Violet with the purple
Hazel's
hair!
been hyping you up for weeks now.
Well, now I'm embarrassed.
Don't be. It's sweet. I wish I had a grandma here to talk about how great I am. Anyway, I'm Violet.
Pleased to meet you, Violet.
We don't get too many new faces around here in Fairhaven, so let me know if you ever want to hang out.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, here's the mayor. Hi.
Oh, hello. Welcome. Welcome, welcome. I am Mayor Otto Soft, and you must be the new voter. I mean neighbor.
Hi, yes, that's me.
If there is anything you need, I'm the one to speak to. We're a friendly town here at Fairhaven. We want to make sure you're settled in well. To that end, we want you to meet everyone, so we've made it a little game.
I do
The fine
like the pride
Fairhaven
flag
folk will
over
let me
town hall.
know after they've met you.
That makes
way,
me very
I can
happy.
give you a prize after you've met everyone. It's really quite clever and progressive.
Plus a little bit creepy.
You're funny. Anyway, come and see me after you've met everyone.
The most elaborate icebreaker. The mayor wants you to meet everyone in town. Okay. So the game is just meet everybody. It's not really a game, but here's a person. Hello.
Yes, I am that Angus.
Excuse me?
Oh, I could tell you were wondering if you recognized me. I am indeed the Angus who was on an episode of Baking Battles. Always nice to meet a fan.
Oh, yes, I thought that was you. What
Do
with this
people
being
really
a bakery and
recognize
all?
you from that show that
Yeah,
much? Are there
I guess
really
it's
enough
obvious.
visitors to this
My
small
little claim to
town
fame.
that watch that particular cooking channel show? Okay. Jewelry store is not open. Okay, I'm gonna go down and then to the left. We got a clock. Hello, clock. No. Sausage person. Hello.
Hi, I'm Kim.
Hi,
Hey,
Kim.
Kim. I'm Tara. I just moved here from the city.
Oh. So what sent you screaming from the city? Dead-end job? Sociopaths on dating apps?
Let's do a little bit of both.
To be honest. Everything in my life kind of fell apart all at once.
Ah, the city is truly a buffet of hot
I love
garbage, isn't it?
I know that shouldn't make me hungry, but it does.
This is the butcher. We only sell humanely treated animal products. Right now, I have to source the meat from off-island, but we'll hopefully get a new rancher to move here soon.
Cool. Nice to meet you.
Meeting all the townspeople. We've already met Damon, who works so far. Gonna walk along the beach. Oh, this is the grocery store. Oh, see? Now we're
There
see?
you are.
We walked
and
in
you
at the
brought
same time.
Tara. Wonderful. Tara, I can't wait to buy your fresh crops. And if you need seeds, I can sell you whatever's in season. Oh, Parker, we need to talk about the kids. They were giggling over breakfast, so I searched Finn's backpack and found a whoopee cushion in there. Again.
I mean, that's
Oh,
terrible.
whoopee cushion?
See?
Where would
That's
I
the
I mean, I guess
problem
they,
right
they sell them
there.
at toy stores
You
and
think
stuff,
it's
and they
funny,
sell them
and
at
I
toy
have to
section
be
still.
mommy cop.
No, I'm taking this seriously, really.
Okay, whatever. You can be the one to go to the next parent-teacher conference. I'm tired of getting stared down by Vanessa.
Let's buy some seeds. Some green bean seeds. I don't think we need potato seeds. And as far as I know, I don't need those things yet. And so we're good to go. Okay. We bought some stuff. Oh, I do want to know what Kai's treasures are today. Kai, what do you have? Ooh, you have trees. I don't have money for that, Kai. Get out of here. Alright, we've met them there. Who are we still missing? Use your map to visit areas you haven't been to yet. Okay. Who's this person?
Welcome. I am Vanessa
gosh.
Soft, First Lady of Fairhaven. Pleasure to meet you. How is your grandmother doing?
She's...
Why does her
well,
voice make me feel
to be
immediate
honest,
distrust?
she's not doing too well. That's why I'm here.
It's wonderful that you came to help her out. Do let me know if there is any way I can help.
Oh, there's children.
Oh, hey, you're new here. I'm Sebastian. Who are you?
I'm Tara.
Who
I
are
just
you?
moved here to help out my grandma Hazel. Do you know her?
Oh, yeah. Hazel's cool. Like, for a grown-up. I'll see you around.
Hello. You're a stranger.
Yes.
Yeah, hi. I'm a
I just
stranger
moved
in your
here.
backyard
I'm Tara.
talking to
What's your
stranger
name?
children with no
Emmy.
lover. Don't surround. That's
Well,
super weird.
now we're not strangers anymore, are we?
But the mayor told me I have to meet everybody, and you count.
My mom
Which
said
I guess
I should
is
make
cool,
an effort
that the
to make
children
you feel
actually count.
welcome in town or whatever. So, hi, I guess. I'm Juliet.
Hey, Juliet.
Juliet has a pink
It's
streak
nice
in
to
her
meet
hair,
you.
but you can't see it because
Okay,
she's behind this way.
bye.
Okay, bye. Okay, last child.
Hello. Are you my mom's new friend?
Depends. Who's your mom?
Lena.
Then yes. Nice
Wow.
to meet you. I'm
Lena
Tara.
and
Nice to meet
Parker
you
have
too.
4 kids?
I'm Finn.
That's a lot of children. Okay. Let's see. We've met Parker. We haven't been out this way yet. Fairhaven Woods. Or maybe we have. No, we haven't. It's so cute. I just love it. Okay. Let's pick some mushrooms. Oh, and a peanut. Oh, I want this grasshopper. Honeycutt is so funny. She's like, just like in this like, wild, crazy, not crazy, but just like wild, antic phase of her life where she just likes to say things are wild and fun. And then fart in my face. Hi, kitty. This kitty cat. Strange cat. This cat now has a little bit of heart for me. Just a little.
Oh, such a pretty girl.
I love you, kitty cat. I will make you mine. Oh my gosh, where does the time go? Oh. Chop. 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 I got wood. I'm gonna try and get some more before I head back. I like that I don't have to like make my axe. I just have one. Like it takes that whole like constantly having to replace broken things out of it, which I don't know. Like I guess it's nice to not have it be too easy, but there's so much else to do. Like maybe that's because I am a lazy bean and I just want to be able to do all the things without having to actually do. Oh, thanks. I don't know. Okay. What's over here?
There's a plaque that reads, "This beloved tree be old as the town itself."
Interesting. Somebody's close. I'm gonna have to run back. Oh, a mandrake. Oh, tree. Chop. I do love her.
I'm all out of strength.
Oh, okay.
I could eat some food to recover some strength.
We
Or
should
try
just-
again tomorrow.
Yeah, we'll just go home. That's. But I do like her one-armed. Okay, one last pet for Kitty.
Here, kitty, kitty.
There we go. Oh, fireflies.
There's whispering? What is that? Something spooky and weird is going on here.
Oh. Maybe we can ask Grandma about it? What's this? Oh, little old man! Little old man! Why are you so fast? You're so little and you're so old. Slow down. Oh, I can't talk to you. Okay, goodbye. Like, we know Grandma's a witch. We know we're a witch. we haven't gotten to like do any witchy stuff. Okay, I'm still turned around. Just kitty. Okay, go down. Don't pet the kitty. Walk past the kitty. Ignore the kitty. Break kitty's heart. Break my own heart. It's fine. Oh. And I wonder if there are people at the bar this time of night. A little bit more of the map. The bar is down, and we just need to go home. It's too late. Too late to go to the bar. We have farming to do.
I am all out of strength.
Okay.
I could eat some food to recover some strength.
Okay. The controls are pretty intuitive. Like I was thinking to myself, like, oh,
am
how
I
am I
ready
gonna...
for bed?
Yes, you are. Like to skip some of the dialogue and stuff. It's nice. Wednesday. Oh, Grandma! Bless you. Cover your face.
Are your allergies acting up?
Just spray that everywhere.
No, it's all the dust in the front room. But sweeping makes my back ache, so I've turned a blind eye for months now.
But that's exactly what I'm here to help with, Grandma.
Then would you mind showing those dust bunnies the front door?
Get out of there,
There's a
dust
broom in my
bunnies.
room you can use.
You wait out here. Those dust bunnies have no idea what's coming for them.
Yeah.
I'll have to move this rug to make real headway. Whoa! Is that an actual trapdoor? Jeez, Grandma. What are you keeping
It's your
down there?
sex dungeon. Grandma.
So, the trapdoor under the rug? What is it for?
Man, if she doesn't say
Preserves
sex
and pickles?
dungeon, I'll cry.
Or old machinery?
It's not important, honeybee. Will you be out and about tonight?
Probably, but
Could you fetch me some moonflower? It only blooms after sunset. You'll know it by the white blossoms. See, my moonflower tea blend makes me feel so healthy. I get a blush on these old cheeks.
For her dungeon.
Go right past Parker's workshop into the woods and you'll find what you need.
I feel like I'm getting redirected here.
At my age, it's awfully hard to hear certain things. Did you...
Her grandma does
back in
remind me a little bit of my
Yes,
grandma. Like my
Grandma,
grandma
but
like talks that same way of like,
Are
yeah.
you brewing
Well, you know,
moonshine
anyway.
down there? You can tell me if you're brewing moonshine.
I can already taste that tea.
That was normal.
Oh, let's water our potatoes. And we can also plant our green beans. Green beans. Water. So the green beans, water for potatoes. Okay. Do I need to put this back? No, it just goes away. I couldn't remember, and then I was like, So, we still have a few people to meet. We can't do the blossom thing until nighttime anyway, so maybe we go up in north and see what we can see. Oh, we can't because of the bridge. Okay. Danger bridge. Oh, I need to chop logs. Grandma has asked you to chop some logs around the farm. I haven't seen any logs around the farm. Is this a log? Yes. Oh, but I also found this. Is this a log? Clearly. Yeah, I like the idea of like just having the equipment, but being able to like eventually upgrade equipment to be able to like do bigger stuff. But I like that I just have it and it's not breaking. That's great. Give wood to Grandma. Can I do this now? Cannot do rocks yet. Okay. We're gonna give it to her because I forgot what this quest was for, and I wonder if it was for the bridge. I don't think it is, but we could try it. Grandma. Here's
Oh, that wood looks nice and dry and ready to burn. Great. Thank you for doing that for me.
It was no trouble. Phew. It was hard work, though.
Oh, look at you. You're plumb tuckered out. What do they teach young girls in the city these days anyway? If you work too hard and don't keep an eye on your energy, you're likely to pass out. But there's an easy solution. Good old-fashioned country cooking. Here's another serving of the soup I made earlier.
Let's go.
It'll
Soup
fix
from
you
Grandma.
right up.
Soup from Grandma. Inventory. Eat. I'm gonna eat the other one too. And we're gonna have a very productive, busy day. Let's have weed. Oh, I guess it is sitting in my inventory. It's just not taking up like a space. Okay. Oh my gosh, the boys. Hang on. They're just like right there again. Okay, I have met both of you. I like all the little dandelion floaties. They make
Hello
me happy.
again.
Hi. You know, you don't see many blacksmiths these days.
Yeah, I know. Well, my great-grandpa was a blacksmith, so I guess you could say it runs in the family. Of course, he died before I was born, but it's his hammer I've got.
That's really cool. So your family taught you?
Oh, nah, I'm self-taught. A city export like yourself. It's harder work than sitting at a desk, but it's more rewarding. You'll come to love it here.
I'll see.
Okay. So, of our quests, we have to wait till nighttime for that. We have to wait for the potatoes. We just have to return to Grandma? Okay. Not that way. Okay. I see. What could have been a nice little loop that would have made things easier. They made it more difficult. We've already met jeweler guy. And I want the rainbow cake. Angus. Oh, okay. Is there anybody else in here? No, just the mayor. Oh, and we got the school. Oh, the mayor's wife is the teacher? It's unfortunate. Oh, that's why. So, I don't know if that's better or worse. That it wasn't some person's house, but instead it was their school? I don't know. Their, like, school playground. I wonder what's down at the beach that I haven't seen. Running down the stairs. So fast, so fast. So we've pretty much gone all the way that way. Oh, Amira.
Why,
Hi,
hello
Amira.
again. I hope you're not in need of my services.
What, me? No.
I've been taking care of your grandmother.
Oh, wow. Thank you. I came as soon as I heard she was sick.
She's lucky to have such a caring family.
Well, I mean, to be honest, we kind of fell out of touch for a while. I'm trying to make up for lost time.
We can't regain lost time. But you're here for her now. That is enough.
Can I keep talking to Amira? No. Is there anybody I don't know? Oh, diner person.
Welcome to Cafe Moretti. What can I get you today?
Oh, I'm new here. I just came by to say hello. It does smell great in here, though.
Wait, you're Hazel's granddaughter. Welcome. I hope you come back soon. Moving always works up an appetite. Oh, where are my manners? I'm Sophia.
Hey, Sophia. I'm Tara. It's nice to meet you.
Sophia. Okay. I only have one person left. Who have I not met? I feel like time goes by very fast. Let's see. Any new people inside the grocery store? No. And then that's like the butcher place. That's the bar. The Ocean View countryside, which we have not gotten to yet. Ooh, a shop. Oh, this is a cute little area. About to start Tiny Toad's bedtime. Are you going to take a break to do goat parade, or would you like me to do it after bedtime? How about after bedtime we check in, and we'll see? Because I am going to need to take a break soon, but I'm going to need to restroom. And so I'll probably try and do that once I know Tiny Toad's is not also taking over the whole restroom. Shells. Little crab. And take the shells. Shells. Banana. Banana, banana. B-A-N-A-N-A. Is that right? B-A-N-A-N-A. B-N-A-N-A. Said it too many times. Seaweed. Sounds good. Oh, the plan. That sounds good too. Oh, this is a cute area. Look at this little, like, farm. I want a farm like this.
Hi, I'm Tara, Hazel Wylde granddaughter. Nice to meet you.
No, I remember you. Used to run past my farm on the way to the beach when you were little.
Yes! And Grandma always told me to mind that I didn't trample your crops. You're Thomas, right?
Yep.
Gosh, your farm has the most
Achievement
stunning view on the
unlocked.
whole
New
island.
acquaintances.
I'm not selling.
I didn't mean...
Your
Oh,
grandma
geez.
needs help on her farm. But it's not as easy as just moving here and picking up a pitchfork.
I know.
Why is he, like, yelling at us?
I'm here to learn.
For Hazel's sake, I hope you learn quick.
Jeez. Okay. Return to Mare Soft for your prize. I need to do a little bit more exploring first. That's gonna go somewhere. Where's this going? Ooh, an old lighthouse. Cute. What's this? Oh. What's this? Oh. Yay. Okay. I feel like the mayor is already not going to be in his office because it's after 5. And so we probably just go to the woods. I do want to know what's further. Like, what is this way? Come on. Oh, what's that block? Log. Well, we're gonna make a lot of mushroom soup. Better get ready, Grandma. Okay, and it's almost... Is it hugs and kisses? Okay, that's perfect. I'm actually gonna do a quick BRB because I promise you're not. I know you're not gonna. I just need to do a quick. I'm gonna do a quick BRB because I have to run inside to go to the restroom too. So then I can give you all the hugs and kisses and squeezes. We'll be right back.
Do you have enough energy for picky up?
Maybe after I've gone to the restroom. Yeah. Tomorrow's Tiny Toots' birthday. How old are you gonna be? 5? Oh, just like your friend Ryan from school? Wyatt from school. Oh. Ethiopian food, because a lot of it is eating with your hands. Like, I just, like, with the pandemic, I was too weirded out. But, you don't like the last name Hands? Well, Izzy is from Our Flag Means Death, so he's the gay pirate. Is there just a freaking... I swear to God, I just saw a freaking robot. What? I swear I just...
Did you get into
I'm trying to hug the wall.
If you are kind enough, maybe it will give you a door.
There's gunshots! Okay.
How do you make doors?
Oh, yay. People are grabbing me. Stop it. Bad beans. You bad beans. What do you think, Krista? How was your day going? Are you having a good Saturday? Yeah? Pretty good? What? Okay. I'm hopping. I'm just a shark in the woods, rolling around. Totally normal behavior. Very short. What happens when I crouch? Am I so little?
Yeah, you're very little.
Look, now I can climb.
You're doing a little squat.
Oh, I see you using the butt words, Amethyst, trying to get me to say it. I'm not gonna say it. Can't make me. You can't make me. Okay, can we check in? Check in at front desk. Is Chevrolet in here dancing? Oh my gosh, Chevrolet. Man. Like, Nan's already back there. Oh my God. Okay, well, so Nana's... How are you doing? I hope you're having a very good day.
After a while.
I was saying hi to somebody, and while I was sitting here, it just yeeted a cup off the table. I don't know. I can't. I'm in detail edit mode, and it's a dangerous place to be. Dangerous for me, because I feel like her face is becoming stranger the more I look at it. But it's fine. It's gonna be. And why are you in your raccoon outfit right now? Mr. Blackbeard, this is not... We have returned! Okay. Toad's going to sleep. Oh, this is taking up a lot of energy. Crap. Okay, no more chopping. Too tired. Too tired to chop. We need to go get that special flower for Grandpa. Nope. I always want to go up that way. I can't. What is this? Bulletins. Oh, quests. I love quests. Yay, I love quests. It's not funny when you're like, yes, I didn't know that was impossible. I mean, I knew that there was like regular quests like from the story, but it's fun that there's a bulletin board with more. Okay, old man. Looking for the flowers.
Oh. Hey, so my mom says your grandma's sick, and that's why you came here.
Yeah, I came back to take care of her.
That's nice. I visited my Nona in Italy when she got sick, too. Well, technically, she was my dad's Nona.
I'm sure she was really happy to see you.
I don't really know. I don't speak Italian, so I didn't know what anybody said. At least you and Hazel speak the same language.
That's a good point.
Kitty. Hi, Kitty, I love you.
Oh, look at the head scratches.
Mm-hmm. Kitty, do you love me? Kitty, love me. Yelling. So impatient, so impatient. Okay. There's a lot of fishing spots. I'm excited to do fishing. Oh, hello. We did it.
Hello? Who's there?
What?
I probably shouldn't spy on strange people creepily creeping through the woods at night.
I'm gonna spy on them. I have a choice.
Come along, Elder Hazel.
Don't rush me, I'm coming.
Grandma?
I mean, we know Grandma's a witch.
Where did she go? She shouldn't be out here at night.
Elder Hazel, this is the third time you've come to the circle without your robe and mask. This is an unacceptable risk.
Bah, it's time for us to come out of hiding. The town won't be afraid of witches if they know that we're their neighbors.
People seem nice until the day comes when they
I mean, I'm sorry. I think the robes and the masks are a lot scarier.
People become mobs.
Well, I didn't bring Tara here so she could skulk around like she's doing something wrong just by being who she is.
So you think your intuition was right then? She has the gift? When will she be ready to join us?
Join them?
You hear something?
Uh-oh.
Oh, maybe she didn't see Grandma with the well? I don't know. Wait until Grandma returns to ask her about the mystery. Okay. Time to go get into bed. Or should we wait up for Grandma? Ooh, I might try and wait up for Grandma. What do I need? So, for Parker. Amira wants powdered calcium.
If you ever have extra baked goods to sell, let me know. I'm always happy to mix things up for my customers.
Bruno.
Your grandma was always good luck on a boat back in the day.
So Bruno is the
She
mayor's
had a
dad.
heron's eye for spotting fish.
Okay.
But how can you see fish if they're underwater?
That's a good question.
She hasn't taught you much, has she?
Potatoes?
Here, take this rod. Keep your eyes peeled whenever you're near water for the shadows of swimming fish. When you see them near the surface like that, you know they're feeding. Trick is to get one of them to nibble on your hook instead of the bait fish they're chasing.
How do I do that?
You'll need some bait. Here are some worms. You're not the squeamish type, are you?
But they don't
You gotta
feel.
hook your bait and cast your line. You'll
Worms.
feel when you got one, and then you reel it
I
in.
got 3 worms.
Wait, back up. How do I cast my line?
You'll get the hang of it. The lake in the forest is a nice place to start. But take care, you hear? Don't go in those woods after sunset. I've seen things, well, you wouldn't believe me. My boy Otto didn't either till he saw it for himself. Just stay safe and come back and see me after you've given it a few tries.
So I'm gonna quick any shells. Any things for me to scoop? No. Other way. I think actually I'm gonna turn up the music.
So, you moved here to help out on Hazel's farm? Do you know anything about farming?
Not even a little bit.
Oh, don't sweat it. I'd only worked in my parents' kitchen before opening my own butcher. I mean, you've at least had a garden or potted plants before, right?
Not really.
Oh. Well, good luck.
Thanks. Oh my gosh, there was a very large spider. Greg, Grumpy, can you hear me? I need assistance. It's very big. It's too big. It's too big, it's too scary. Grumpy! 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 I know I should go to bed, but I'm scared of a spider. Okay, it's so big. Okay, I'm just gonna not move too much. Okay. Okay, I'm going. Oh, I was gonna fish. Collect worm.
Oh, wow!
Is that a fish? Oh my god, it's so big! Oh god! It's growing. I hate it. Why? Big spider. I might have angered it. I caught a sardine. It's gross. I don't know what spider is now. Sure. I don't know why I'm so scared. So little, and it does important things, but also... Ah.
Oh, gotcha!
I caught another sardine! I know I need to go get to bed, but I've been traumatized by Grandma and her weird masked friends. And I just need to do a little fish. I need some alone time. Oh, nope, I guess I can't. It's Thursday!
Oof. I should get myself to bed earlier today.
I guess. Oh, we really slept in. Hi, Grandma. I have questions. I don't know where the spider went. I have questions for the spider as well. Okay.
See, a bit of food is all you need when your energy is low, and then you're right as rain. For a while. You still need plenty of sleep. Even my cooking is no match for a good night's rest.
But Grandma, you're the one who should be resting. I don't want you troubling yourself to cook for me.
Ah, is that your way of trying to get my recipe book? Did Sophia put you up to it? She's always trying to get a peek at my recipes, but you can tell her they stay in the family. I hide my recipe book in the stove. She never thinks to look in there. Go on, try one.
Okay. Well, which one is your favorite?
I am quite
Hiding
partial
recipe,
to
like hiding any
mushroom
kind of book in a
risotto.
stove feels like a way to start a fire. Yay, more mushroom soup. Okay. And then...
Grandma, so can we talk about the fact that I saw you with some people in masks and robes in the woods last night?
It would be nice to talk after I've had some tea.
Grandma and her freaking tea.
Oh, yes, some tea would really hit the spot.
Okay, make Grandma some restorative tea. Okay. Tea. Okay, I did it. I cook. Oh, my tea. Here, Grandma. Have some tea.
Oh, my. Oh, you make a very potent brew. Here's that key to the basement that you asked about.
But the hooded strangers?
Go on down, my dear. It will all make sense, I promise.
Okay. Let's go into Grandma's sex dungeon. Let's go water our plants first. Okay. Oh, we could go get these burger. Buy rice and click mushrooms. Okay. Alright, let's go buy some rice for Grandma's mushroom obsession. This way. Oh, let's go down. Oh, I guess it's just a loop. I suppose I probably could have looked at the map, but it does go down eventually, so let's go that way. Spider friend, please go away, never come again. Spider friend, this place isn't for you. This is not your home, spider friend. This is not your home, spider friend. This is not your home, spider friend. Go. Ah. I'm too scared. I'm too scared of it. Oh my god. Like, jumpy. Okay, well, I don't think I heard it. I think I just scared it away. And I forgot to pause. That's the one thing I'm having a hard time with this game is that I had the same problem with Animal Crossing, but the forgetting to pause when you're dealing with a game that has like real-time sort of mechanics. Let's see. Okay. Oh, this is the barn and the chicken coop. Yeah, so this is gonna be like my house eventually, I guess.
Look at this old rundown ranch. I hope it gets fixed up one day.
I see. Maybe it will. Maybe somebody else will come and take over the ranch. by the time I'm done, I'm guessing since you recently took a break, you want me to do the goat parade. If you could, also, I have been being tortured by a scary large spider that will not leave me alone. I would like you to come protect. Please. Please protect. I do love the way Mare walks. Very, Mrs. Rose style.
Wonderful! The last citizen has let me know that you've been introduced. As
Yeah.
promised, here is your reward for playing our little game. We
Yay.
hope it helped you acclimatize.
Thanks. Money's great too, though.
We like the money. Oh, we need to stop. Parker. Parker, we have stuff for you.
This is quality stuff. I don't know how I'll make it up to you, Tara.
Okay. So... Oh, and then we were gonna buy some rice from Jennifer. That's not the way to the general store. Going, keep going. Is it gonna be closed?
Hi, are you settling in okay?
I'm still figuring out my way around and meeting everyone.
Well, take your time. A new town can be overwhelming, and some of the folks here are a little more overwhelming than others.
Okay, that is... Oh, now I have to go home. Thank you, Jumpy. Yep. About to be very fast in the dark goat parade. Pause. Here. Okay. And then... They're ready. They hear that Grumpy is inside the garage. Can you turn the outside light on, Greg? Or is that light on? Yeah. Yeah.
It is switched on. So you have to ask.
Oh. I don't know if that works. Go parade. Go parade. So one thing that you can do is you can flick it on and off and it will turn on. You can flick the switch on and off and then it will turn on. Yay! Goats, goats, goats. Oh, Adora and Elsa battling it out, getting ready for the foods. Adora says, "You better get out of my way, you tiny baby." Oh, Daddy's doing goat parade, sweetie. He just went out the front door if you want to go follow them. Oh, okay. Off they go. It's already done. Yep. No, I'm still playing games. Why am I playing games? Because it's fun? Hi, Simba, I love you! Thank you so much for that work. What's wrong, sweetie? I can't hear you, honey. What's wrong? Oh, because you have to do learning stuff at school, so you can't just play all day? Oh. Simba, you're too nice to me. I hope you're having a very good day. I miss your face. Okay, we're gonna get back into it. Are you just gonna lay there, sweet pea? Until daddy comes back? Okay. That's fine. If that's what you must do. Just my sleepy child. Okay. Why did what freeze? Oh, the button changes my screen for me. Thank you so much for those biddies. I appreciate you. Okay, I think we just need to go home. Which is this way. Yes, honey. I have to go to bed. It's 8 o'clock. It's bedtime. It's not the middle of the night, but it is past bedtime. Mm-hmm. Okay. Grandma, were we supposed to do something?
Tell me, honeybee, does Arthur mind that you left your job in the city to come help me?
Well, I didn't really leave my job. My job left me.
Oh no.
Our site got acquired, but the new parent company just wanted our subscriber list, not our editors. Maybe
Yes,
Dad
it's
wishes
like
I was
another
using my
thing. That's
degree in a
another
new
life
job in the
series.
city. But then who would help you here? He's not going to come do farm work.
That's for certain. Your father has the blackest thumb I've ever known. Even when he was a boy. Oh, we were sad when he left. But the garden sure wasn't.
Okay, so... Oh, we need to look beneath the trapdoor. Where was the trapdoor? Under the rug. Under the rug. Under the rug. Under the rug. Oh, and then now I can turn off the goat cam. Mm-hmm. Hmm? Well, it's time for me to play games right now. That's what I'm doing. Oh, and then I was going to move Masa. Right there. And then... There we go. Okay. Oh, but yes, Simbo, I hope that you're taking care of yourself. You're doing very good. I miss you. And thank you. Okay, focusing. We're going in the trapdoor.
Okay, I definitely have more questions than answers now. Is that a cauldron?
Not just any cauldron, your cauldron.
What? Oh, no, I am not a...
Witch? Oh, my dear, I feel as spry as I did 50 years...
did not mean to skip that, but... Okay.
Grandma says this is my cauldron, but
Things
I
have
better
been
wait
all
until...
over the... I mean, things have been all over the place for me, but I'm glad to have some time to hang out. Yes, for sure.
Grandma says this is my cauldron, but...
I am sure. Okay, so what do I need to do? My grandpa's passed away, sweetie, so my grandpas aren't alive anymore. What?
Grandma says this is my cauldron,
Oh, in the
but
game? I don't know.
I
don't
better
know where
wait
the
until
grandpa
I
is in
learn
the
how to
game,
use it.
actually. It sounds like complicated family things. Okay. Read the incantation Grandma gave you. Oh, okay. Wait. While standing next to the silver willow tree in the woods. Okay. Well, we're gonna go to sleep. I don't have a potato to eat.
Is it time for bed?
Oh. Oh my god, giant spider! Oh god! Not on me, but scaring me. Oh god, well, it ran away. I scared it away. It's fine. It went that way.
Oh, good. You're up. The mayor's called a town meeting this morning.
Oh, a town meeting?
We should get down there and see what he's making a fuss about this time.
Okay.
Do you think it's some kind of trouble?
Why are we
really hope
excited?
Not, but I guess we'll see.
Lead the way, Grandma.
Follow me.
Okay. Where have you been? Follow Grandma to town hall for a meeting. Okay. Can I?
I better follow Grandma.
But I'm gonna forget about my plan. It's gonna happen. I'm gonna forget about them. Okay. Well, what if I just beat Grandma down on me? Get out of my way, Grandma. Too slow. I'm assuming it's gonna be...
I better follow Grandma to the town hall.
Okay, Grandma. I don't actually know where anything is. Oh.
Settle down, everyone. Settle down. I've brought you together to discuss a very important matter. There have been very strange goings-on in our beloved town of Fairhaven. There is a force at work in our community, and I don't know who's responsible, but whoever they are, they don't have Fairhaven's best interests at heart.
Oh, I don't like where this is going.
Me neither.
I've seen strange lights in the forest at night.
Yeah. And folks in robes and masks wandering around after sunset.
Yes! Yes, good. You know exactly what I'm talking about.
Wait, I'm sure there's a rational explanation for all this.
No matter the cause, we must ensure our town doesn't become a home for roustabouts and unsavory types.
God.
I ask all of you to keep a sharp eye out for
Satanic
signs
panic
of
all over again.
mischief. And if you see anything,
go cause some mischief.
report it to me.
Or me, if you prefer. I'd hate for anyone in Fairhaven to feel fearful.
I'm terrified of that woman.
Mayor Otto, soft on business. Soft in the head is more like it. Him and his fancy britches wife standing up there and casting judgment on others.
Uh-oh.
He can't... Just tell people to spy on their neighbors, to be so afraid that they distrust everyone around them.
Maybe we could cast a goodwill spell to make everyone be nice to each other.
I wish it were that simple. But just because you can solve a problem with magic doesn't mean you should. Thomas could use some help on his farm. I know he's got an order of beans due, and he doesn't have enough plots going to make it in time. He's too proud to ask for help, though. Here, take these seeds. They should be enough to make the order.
Are these magic beans?
Oh, heavens no. But if you've got the means to give him a boost, it certainly wouldn't hurt.
We do love magic beans. Let's see. Oh, and a bulletin board. I have too many bulletins. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Let's go buy the rice stuff and then do our fishing. I know you want your potatoes, Grandma, but they take time. That's not correct. And then I need to remember to water my plants before the day ends. Look at this. This is not good. That is not a giant square. This one? That's fine.
I place a monthly order for fresh flowers, Violet. It's not like I asked for a rush job.
I'm sorry. It's just that the ferry's running behind schedule. Again. Maybe if the ferry wasn't underfunded, this wouldn't happen.
Make excuses if you like. Late is late, as I tell my students.
Bad time?
No, it's fine. When my dad was mayor, the ferry always ran on time. Hey, do you have any wildflowers growing on your farm?
Where's Violet's
Maybe
dad?
I could make some substitutions.
Sort of. How do you feel about thistles?
You're suggesting I make a bouquet out of thistles? Thistles?
Look, if you don't want them...
Did you hear me say no? The sooner I can get Vanessa out of my hair, the better.
Have some thistles.
So, anything I can put in my bouquets?
Stress no more, I found just the thing. See?
I keep my thistles
They're pretty.
in a bag.
Yes!
With my soup.
Those will do nicely. It's hard sometimes. Filling all these orders to decorate the house I grew up in.
Whoa, does the mansion go with the job?
Yep. Anyway, thanks. You saved my butt.
This will be the best bouquet ever. Oh, the puns are so good. Can I buy flower seed? Yeah, I love flower seed. And away we go. Making acquaintances. It looks like Violet is really getting to know Tara. Keep an eye out for her around the island in different times, and something special might happen. Ooh. Space. Okay. I need to go there. I can do it. We can manage it without getting lost.
Oh, just who I was hoping to see.
Who, me?
Here, take this to Hazel.
Oh, I couldn't.
Nonsense. Take it. Your grandma and I have a friendly pie rivalry of sorts. This is my answer to her last move. A devastatingly perfect key lime tart. I bake
This
with
is one
love.
of those games that has the crazy
but I
ads.
also bake
No,
to win.
Simbo. So actually,
Okay. I'll
it's
make
made
sure
by
she
a
gets
really
it.
like.
Let me know
I don't
how she
at
likes
least their
it.
marketing was good because they marketed to me on TikTok while they were still in production. Like, oh gosh, I feel like a year ago. And so it just came out today on Steam and on Switch. And basically, like, this is the first week you've just moved to town to help your grandma. And so, like, by day, you help her on the farm, and by night, you help her do witchy things. And so, it's very cute. It's like, I'm trying to, like, think about... It reminds me a lot of, like, Harvest Moon, but so much better. My first cookbook. Getting it. Okay, I will wait on this one. Yeah, new recipes. Yeah, it is so cute. I was really like grateful Albie, one of our mods, I don't know if Albie has fallen asleep or not, but Albie had tagged me in a comment on one of their posts, and I responded too, and so I got to get a free
It's so
tea.
like
So
cool of you to come hang with Hazel.
feels
When I first took over my stall from the last owner, Hazel came and bought chocolate every day. Turns out she doesn't even like chocolate. She just figured if other people saw her giving me business, they would too.
Well, I do like chocolate, so you will be seeing a lot of me too.
Sweet.
Okay, I guess we'll look at his treasures. His treasures are very expensive. I do want this one chili. What would I do with it? Can I plant it? I don't think so. So it's not like seeds. I'm just gonna take it. General store. Oh, I forgot to buy rice first. Hey, Albie. How are you doing? How is your relaxing? I need rice. I am gonna buy 1 flour just in case. Okay. Quest-wise, we need to go do... Oh, we need to go do our incantation. Bum, bum, bum. Feel relaxing, just more horizontal. Very good. Very good, very good. So, was it the creepy whispery tree? I feel like it's the creepy whispery tree. To the creepy whispery tree we go. Watch what found. Your feet hurt. You have a big day tomorrow. What are you doing tomorrow?
Let's see. The inscription says, "If I be worthy, ancient tree, give a silver branch to me." Please?
Cute.
Wow! Thanks, magic tree.
Your grad school's yearly homecoming? Oh. Like a dance? Okay. So, Grandma, my branch. Grandma, the tree gave me a branch. It's my very own special branch. Can I open this? Special branch. No. No dance. Because when I think of homecoming, I think of homecoming dances because I was not like a sports kid. So I don't know like if there was like other things. Is there a football game? I don't really know what things mean. This kid always looks sad.
Fair warning, Mom might try to overload you with food. Feeding people is, well, like her love language.
Oh, lectures with keynotes. That is not a homecoming. Amira!
How's the farm? Are you inundated with chores yet?
There's not that much to do, honestly. The farm seems so much smaller now that I'm an adult.
When I first came here, I didn't think I'd have much work either. But living things, plants and people, are always growing, changing, becoming run down. And caring for them takes a lot of time.
Okay. That wasn't very uplifting, Amira. So a funeral to attend for former patient. Oh. Well, I'm sorry for your loss, but I'm glad that you get to go do that. It'll be very good. Can I buy things from blacksmith? Not that I have money. Oh. Okay. That's so much money. I don't have that kind of money. Get out of here, Natalia. Big, big, busy week. I feel arrow sentiment in the Discord, right? I know. I think what I want to do is maybe do game night Friday night. I think that would be fun. Like to do like silly games like Jackbox and Gartic Phone, and if we had enough people like Among Us or something, just to like laugh and play games. Tara, Elder Hazel has told us much about you. We hope to meet you soon. Ever yours, the Fairhaven Coven. I need to water my plants. But Simba's right, like, it is funny because a lot of, like, the artwork does remind me a little bit of, those Eve's Garden or something games that were just, like, the mix match games, but they had all the advertising that were, like, really well done, beautifully animated, like, videos, but not the actual gameplay. And so... Okay, we need to talk to Grandma. Oh wait, we should do a fish. Do a fish. Think of the ads with the grandma having a big secret. Right, right. I feel like I recently like listened to like a whole like hour-long podcast. Maybe it was a YouTube video about those ads. Hot fish, a playful freshwater fish found near the farm. Common. Sell it to Bruno or cook with it. Okay. We have done our fishing. We'll tell Bruno about it tomorrow. Okay. Grandma, look at my branch. I have a stick. No, I don't want to cook. I want to show Grandma my stick. Grandma, look.
Is your wand ready?
Yes. Look.
It's a stick.
Careful where you point that thing. Oh my, you have a lot to learn. It's time for you to meet the Coven. Are you ready to go?
Yes.
Sure.
Let's go. Ready.
Okay. The brambles only allow friends of
I mean,
the
why can't they
Coven
just go
through.
around?
So this
It's fine.
incantation helps it to identify you. Once it meets you, it'll know you're a friend and let you through from now on. Say the spell when you're ready.
I'm ready. I'm ready right now, Grandma.
A friend of the Coven comes to you. Unravel your brambles and let me through. It worked!
Well done. Now, let's head on up.
Fun.
Grandma, what is this place? Who are these people?
Shh. You've got to be properly introduced.
Who approaches the sacred circle?
I bring one who wishes to know the mysteries of this coven.
Hi.
Welcome, Initiate. Elder Hazel has told us so much about you. I am the High Priestess of this coven. Before you can join
They
us,
also
you
have
must vow
voice
to never
modulators
reveal
in
the
their masks?
location of
Like,
our
what's
circle
going on?
or the details of our rights to any others. Do you promise to abide by our covenants?
Sure.
Oh, I don't even have the chance to say
I
no.
promise. I'm so excited that I'm a witch. This is going to be so much fun.
About that, honeybee.
You're not a witch. Not yet. First, you must cast the initiation rite.
Oh.
Came back from work and is that a cult leader? I didn't get so.
How do I
apparently because of the way the coven like is I don't know ostracized, like the other coven people are weird and like I think that the other coven people just have like cult kinks where they like to pretend that they're in a cult. But Grandma thinks they're all dumb, so. But we are becoming a witch. And so let's see. Very reasonable behavior. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we still need to talk to Bruno. We need to get Grandma. Here, Grandma.
The altar is where we perform important rituals, like turning the season. Continue with your training, honeybee.
Grandma,
and
don't
you'll
you
be
want your
prepared
mushrooms?
when the moment comes?
Grandma, I have your mushrooms. Okay. I guess I have to focus on the incantation. Speak to the Farseer to begin learning incantation magic. This guy.
Are you the Farseer?
What? Yes, Farseer, that's me. Though a nearsighted Farseer.
You know, you sound a little bit like...
You've no idea who I am. I'm wearing a mask. Listen, you want to sit here playing guessing games? Or do you want to learn more magic?
I mean, to be fair, I kind of want to do Farseer equals Shelby for sure. For sure.
Tricky stuff. Mess it up, and there won't be much left of you beyond dust.
That sounds a bit dangerous to start with.
Only to fool initiates that don't follow instructions. Now, listen closely. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
I'm ready.
I need you to chop lots of wood.
What?
Turn it into paper.
Right.
You'll need a paper press. Put it in your tool shed.
How will this help me with incantations?
You gotta write things down.
Will be
You gotta write down the incantations. Oh my gosh, Shelby.
One of us is clearly crazy. I'm beginning to think it's me for listening to you.
Okay. The Farseer needs paper for some reason. We need this right now? Because it's like getting late. Okay, Grandma will not take her stuff, so I guess I go this way. Let's see. Who do you think this one is?
Hey, welcome to the Bad Lighting and Great Costumes Club. We meet every night.
Bartender? Oh. I don't need to. Well, actually, I do want to do this one.
Farseer.
I'm sorry, what?
Name's Farseer. I see. Far.
Like you've got great vision?
Visions.
Right. Okay. Nice to meet you, Farseer.
I really do love the voice acting for this too. It's so good.
Excuse me, your magicalness.
High Priestess works fine, you know.
Oh, okay. Well, High Priestess, how long has this coven been in Fairhaven?
Witches have always been drawn here, and because of that, the coven has been here for many, many generations.
Okay, I think...
Hey! You can call me the Acolyte. It's nice to meet you, but I'm not supposed to speak to you much yet.
I think that's the jeweler.
I welcome you to this gathering.
Do I have to go all the way home? I'm gonna collect all these flowers. You better believe it. Hi, kitty. I love you, kitty.
Listen to that purr.
Kitty, love me more. Oh, chop wood. It is getting very dark. Oh, it's gonna make me pass out soon. I'm trying to get home. I'm trying. I wonder if I can change my outfit. Because the mini skirt's just not quite... Oh, hi, Grandma. You want your mushrooms?
I think I have everything we need.
Now, I've written down...
Yay. Okay. Hooray. I feel like I had a quest with Parker. Parker, come back here. I wish I could run faster.
Hey, Parker. Quick question. Did the mayor make you play a game to meet everyone when you first moved here?
Well, Otto wasn't mayor back then. It was Violet's dad, Antonio Miranda. And no, I don't think he asked me to do that. It might have been useful, come to think about it. Some folks are harder to get to know than others.
Okay. Okay, I'm trying to get home. I need a, like, what I need a roller skate. Not a bicycle. No, no, no. I want, or Heelys. Man, I miss having Heelys. I need bulletins. Well, I need all that wood for other things. Trying to get home. But I'm secretly just as slow as Grandma. Bum, ba-da-bum. Okay. Technically I'm home, but I do need to... No! It's Saturday!
Oh, I don't feel so good.
Yeah. Oh.
Good. You're finally awake.
Oh my gosh.
Amira?
You pushed yourself too hard and developed a fever. Then you passed out.
I was having amazing hallucinations.
Sorry, Tara, but it's back to the real world for you. Now, it may take a few days for you to go back to feeling normal. And don't let me catch you treating yourself poorly again, or we will have words.
Okay. You're scary with words. Won't do that. I'm already feeling better, though. Whatever Amira puts in her medicine, it's amazing.
Okay. Well, at least we're not, you know, stuck at home. Oh wait, I was gonna talk to Amira. Hi, Amira.
You seem very cosmopolitan. Amira or Dr. Syed?
Oh, gosh. Amira is fine. There's no need for formalities in a town with one restaurant. Fairhaven is by far the smallest place I've ever lived. But I've adjusted, and so will you.
Okay. We've got some quests to do. Bruno. I have fish
Wonderful. You got the look of a lifelong angler in your eyes now. Oh, now here's a real challenge. Catching a certain fish is about the right bait, the right place, and luck. I got a hankering for some nice, fresh, striped sea bass. They're ocean fish, so you gotta go to the beach. They might go for a worm, but you'll have better luck with this. In the future, you can keep bait fish you catch to try and hook bigger and more valuable fish. Come back when you caught one.
Okay. It's funny because, like, we've been going for, you know, a little over 2 hours, and it's still just like, oh, we are still definitely in tutorial land.
Hey, have you tried Kim's Butcher Shop yet? There was nowhere on the island to get good bacon until they came along. Now Kai and I can have ourselves a breakfast with the works on the weekends.
Yay! Kim uses they, them pronouns, and people are respecting them. Let's go.
I like Hazel. She reminds me of my grandmother. When I came out, my dad had a hard time with it. Obasan told him to get over himself. I really miss her.
That's so sweet. What treasures do you have today, Kai? What's this? Saffron. I don't have enough money for any of these things. I know. I'm obsessed with Kim. I'm obsessed with Amira. I'm obsessed with purple hair flower person. I also want to adopt this child as my in-game Tiny Totes. Because she is kind of Tiny Terra, but cooler. Okay, I've already talked to Amira. What am I focusing on? Paper. Okay. Okay. I have a little bit of time. It's Saturday. What's this guy doing?
You're a recent arrival, right? Did Otto have you play that meet everyone game?
He sure did. But I found it a good opportunity to introduce myself and the League's mission to the town. Before I knew it, I had 4 new members.
Gross. I don't know, I'm just very sus of him. I'm just very sus. Let's see. Yeah, well, and like the whole building feels like a church, but it's not a church. Which, like, I mean, if it was a church, I would also be sus. But like, it's giving, see, League of the Conscious Mind. It's giving Scientology vibes. I think that's the problem I'm having with it. Oh, and that's somebody's house, but they're not there. Yeah, mayor's residence. Yeah, so instead of like church vibes, it's giving me like Scientology or LDS vibes, which is, say, bad vibes. I'm gonna buy something. Think I need any of these things? I probably should get more garden boxes. I only have 5 monies. I keep forgetting that I have no monies. What's going on, Barker?
Okay, so I met everyone in town and reported back to Otto. So, is he super into keeping tabs on everyone?
More than the last mayor, I guess. But strange things do happen here sometimes. Things you can't really explain. We gotta look out for one another.
I mean, yeah. I still feel like that's a little bit different than spying on your neighbors for the mayor. But maybe that's just me. Fish. Come on, sea bass. Let's go, let's go.
Oh, quick!
Oh, if you want to catch a sea bass, don't reel in this small common fish. Wait for the bigger fish to bite. Oh. Oh! Okay. I love how she just holds it. Okay, we got a sea bass. That's done. So we can go turn that into Bruno and then head back home to finish our... Everybody's heading to the bar. Oh, but yeah, jewelry guy. Oh.
Hola!
Hey, new girl, how's farm life treating you so far?
I'm still figuring everything out.
Well, let me know if anyone ever repairs the entrance to the mine by your farm. I run the jewelry shop, but it's a bit hard making jewelry without actual jewels, you know? Crafting beautiful pieces is one thing, but sourcing the stones is tough.
I'll let you know.
Okay. Bruno is gone. Oh, he's sitting here. Okay. Hi, Bruno.
Oh, would you look at that beauty? What would you like for your prize?
I would like a shower.
Nah, smelling like cut bait is part of the life. You'll get used to it. Speaking of bait, here's some more. I've given you 3 different kinds of bait. Give them all a try. They'll catch different fish in different water. Happy angling!
Hooray! Okay, and then we have phone. We'll pass the bell, pass the blacksmith. I'm starting to get the hang of the map. Slowly but surely. I need to make a paper press. I do not have the money for a paper press. I need to water my plants. Collect my potatoes. Potatoes, potatoes. Do I have any seeds? Let's do a snowdrop. And get some water. Oh, Grandma's in the dungeon. Oh, I guess Grandma's not in the dungeon. Well, I'm on bed. Hi, Grandma.
Is it time for bed?
Yeah. Sunday. Okay, talk to Grandma. Here's some potatoes.
Thank you enough for helping out here, sweetheart. Are the potatoes ready to harvest?
Yes.
Yes, Grandma. Here's 4 potatoes from the field.
Ooh, wonderful. Maybe you've got a greener thumb than you thought. Why don't you take them down to the general store and sell them? I'm sure Lena will give us a fair price for them.
We need the money. Okay.
Grandma, I've been thinking about my childhood memories of your garden. Just bursting with veggies in every color.
Mosquito.
I think we could bring it back to the way it was.
Are you sure? That's quite a bit of work.
What would we need?
Well, for it to be enough to feed us and turn a profit, you'd need to build a bunch more garden beds. That means keeping a compost bin so you can get a whole lot of good soil to fill them. And you'll need to chop some wood to make the beds.
Okay. I'm on it.
Okay. To start, make a compost bin. All right. It is 7 o'clock in the morning. So we need to sell our potatoes. We need our paper. We can cook the risotto now. Okay. Let's cook our risotto. Yay. Okay. And then take that to Grandma. Let's see.
Here you go, Grandma. Here's your mushroom risotto.
Oh, thank you, honeybee. It smells wonderful. But you made enough for yourself, I hope.
Hooray! Okay. And then water this. Kitty cat! My kitty friend!
Aw, hey there, kitty. Do you belong to my grandma?
Kitty friend! Kitty friend! Kitty friend!
Oh, you're a good kitty. Grandma, you didn't tell me you have a cat.
A cat? The last cat I had was old Shadow, rest his soul. He wasn't much to look at, but he was a darn good mouser.
This cat isn't yours? She seems awfully familiar with your garden.
Oh, no. I don't own that cat. What a notion. She's a good friend to have around, though, so play nice.
Maybe we can take her to catch the mice at the barn. Okay. Green beans. And water. And, well, fill the watering can now. I don't have to worry about it. And we'll do compost. Oh, no, don't have the money. Go sell the potatoes. Oh, just hopping fences. Kitty, I love you.
Oh.
Strange cat. Strange cat will become my friend. I got a weed. We should go check out that weird church thing, because it's Sunday. And I think that they have, like, meetings on Sunday. Let's see. Oh. Too many bulletins still. Where's the music go? So quiet. There we go. Oh, that's a little better. I wonder if the music is dependent on where you're at. So, Sunday... Meetings are from 10 to 12. Oh. Ooh.
If you were harvesting the bounties of nature and taste a berry only to find it bitter, you spit it out. This is only natural. It is our bodies protecting us from the dangers of poison. And so, when our community is faced with the bitter malcontents, we too must spit them out for the safety of us all.
Oh my god, content warning. Content warning, religious drama.
Have you met my boo yet? His shop is right next door.
That is so nice. You must never get sick of each other, since you live and work so close together.
Nope. Why, did he say something like that? I mean, Francis does like his quiet time.
You know, there's quite a few of us who moved here from a city. Francis, Kim, Parker, and Messenger Cameron, of course. We're taking over.
Have you been to Violet's flower shop yet? I try to support her business as much as I can. Her dad got a job off island, and I know he sends money home and all, but it's gotta be tough taking care of her brother all on her own.
And of course the mayor's here.
Do you ask every new resident to play the Meet Everyone game?
Oh, yes! After all, that idea won me 3rd place in the Icebreaker Innovation category at the annual mayoral convention.
Congratulations?
Oh, hush, it's hardly worth mentioning.
Good to see you again.
Hi.
Have you seen the notice board in front of Town Hall? There are always lots of ways to help out in the community.
Oh, yes, I saw it.
Wonderful. I'm sure your neighbors will appreciate you.
I don't like listening to her talk. She freaks me out. I don't know why. Oh. I can talk to him again? Oh. Oh, okay. I can get that from my composter thing, I bet. Once I make money, which I cannot do until the general store is open.
It's cool that you're helping Hazel with the farm. Are you, planning to take it over one day?
I still don't even know if I can make a single seed sprout.
What? We made potatoes.
Give it time. When my pa ran the bar, I used to make a mess every time I tried to help out. And look at me now.
This is the homiest diner I have ever been in. Do you run it all by yourself?
Oh, I've always been the only owner. Though my husband Giacomo used to help me. He passed 2 years ago. Pancreatic cancer.
Oh, Sophia, I didn't know.
Hazel was so sweet to me. She knew what it felt like on account of your Nano's passing.
Watch out for the twins. You're new and the last person who was new was Cameron. And let's just say there's a reason the Consciousness Center doesn't have the stained glass windows left over from the old church anymore. and that reason may have involved homemade slingshots.
Hi, Kim.
I took care of my Obasan when she got sick too. I'm really grateful I was able to have that time with her. But make sure you take care of yourself, okay? It's easy to forget to eat when you're in caregiver mode.
They're so smart. Small child.
Mom says you two were friends when you were little.
Well, Lena was older, so she kinda used to babysit me.
Oh, like Julia does with us. It's not a bad hustle. She gets paid to play with us.
I mean, there's a little bit more to babysitting than that, but sure. Small child. Is the general store just closed on Sundays? Of course it is. Hi. What's in your...
It really looks like you've been around the world, Kai.
Well, yeah. Back when I was doing the pro circuit, I hit up a lot of places. But I've been keeping it local lately. Less stress.
Not that I have any money, but it's always good to look, I guess. Is anything open besides the diner? Can I sell stuff at the diner? I can. Okay, I'm gonna sell this food because we need the money. Oh, I have to keep the pie though because it's to, I guess, torture my grandma with or whatever. Okay, now we have money. Get out of here, scary mare. And now we can go build our compost bin and our paper press. Oh. Don't mind me. Alright, compost bin. Build. Sure. And then garden bed? Oh, I see. Okay, so let's build a few compost bins then. And then maybe one more. Okay. Craft. Oh. Okay. And look at that in one day. Can I craft soil? I don't have any more weeds. Okay, I need more weeds. Let's see. Tell Grandma about the compost bin. Sell potatoes tomorrow. Let's build our paper press. Build. Let's make some paper. Okay, we've got our 2 papers. Give the paper to Farseer. Okay. Grandma.
Great job. Now we just need to fill it with weeds and let it work its magic. Then we can start making garden beds.
Yay. Okay. Just need to keep my eye out for weeds. I haven't seen that many, honestly. Okay. do I make this? Ground up seashells. Oh, and a mortar and pestle. Oh, I can do that. Okay. I also still need more seashells. Okay. Okay. So maybe we'll also go to the beach. I don't know if he's going to be out in the forest this early, but who knows? Maybe it will be dark soon enough. Mushroom. I also need to collect things like peanuts and mushrooms from the forest. And I need to pet my kitty. Kitty. I love you.
Aw, who's a good kitty?
Very good. Very good. That kitty has the same eyes as me. I'm telling you. That kitty... Say something. Nut. I guess we've got some energy. Let's chop some trees. Chop. 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 Ooh. Let's try with the crickets. Alright, we want to save and wait for the big one.
Oh, quick!
No, I don't want you, silly little fish. You're a poser. Give me the big fish. Give me your big fish. Big fish. Big. Oh. No little fish. Get away from here. Come on.
Oh, haha! Gotcha!
Take that, big fish. A black crappie. A freshwater fish with black spots found near the woods. An epic catch. Sell it to Bruno or cook with it. Gross. Let's do a choppy chop. 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 Okay, that's probably it for chopping for today. And... do I want to do one more fish? No, let's just go ahead and give the Julie Bomb to the Farseer. Oh, here's Grandma. Here's all the mask people.
Great! Just what we need. Hang on to those and you'll have a use for them in 2 shakes. Incantations or spells read aloud. They require vast amounts of magic and special ingredients at the time of writing them down, and are consumed when read aloud. But they make incredible change to the world. A lot of the most powerful spells are incantations.
Whoa. What do I need to do?
I like your spirit. The next step is obvious. Time for you to go fishing.
Wait, what?
Ah, just any old fishing. You'll only catch what you need at the beach, which is south of Thomas's farm. You must catch me some squid. I've had anchored for calamari for days now.
I thought you were teaching me to do these powerful spells.
I am the best way
Also,
I
want to
know.
give shout outs to like so many of our wonderful stream friends. Tell me all your friends stream without telling me.
Oh, get me those squid.
Yeah, let's get that squid. Okay. Okay, so we need to catch a squid, sell potatoes, build the garden beds, grow more beans. Okay, so we need to buy more beans and sell potatoes. Grandma. Oh, yes, D'Amica, if you have SiriBot in your chat, it's just a built-in command with SiriBot, and so I got Siri because of all, like, the hate raids and stuff last summer, and so, like, I really appreciate it. the person who makes it for free, and they're a streamer too. Yeah, so if you have Siri, if you do !MSO and then put any names of like multiple people or just one person, it will link it. Highly recommend. I think it was in
You did
Sarah's
a great
chat
job
that I
casting
saw that
your
for the first time, and I
incantation
was
to
like,
get
oh my
your
gosh,
wand
that's where
branch.
Siri all on its own,
But
not
actually writing
let alone all the other
incantations
pieces,
can be a
right?
touch trickier.
Yes, I gathered that I have a lot to gather.
It's not just that. When you write your incantation, you'll need to draw magic from the wellspring to charge it with power.
Draw what from where?
Didn't you notice the great big cauldron right by the circle?
Yeah, but I just figured it was for extra big batches of potions.
Oh no, Grumpy!
No, the coven
Did the house
cauldron is
ghost get
where
it?
we leave offerings for the wellspring, the source of all magic here on the island. Our task as a coven is to maintain the wellspring. We cannot draw more energy from it than we put in. I wrote the incantation you read before the Elder Tree, drawing from my magic reserves. But to craft your initiation incantation, you'll need your own. Go on and offer something to the wellspring. Over time, you will learn that it likes some offerings more than others. Try different things and see what happens.
Okay. Let's see. I want to give it a thistle.
Whoa, so now I can cast spells? Cool.
Careful. We must never draw more magic from the wellspring than we need. Our offerings keep it in balance.
What happens if it falls out of balance?
Nothing for you to worry about, my dear. It
Oh, you
is
know
all
it's
of our
falling out of balance.
responsibility to maintain the cauldron, and we've never
Oh,
failed
we're gonna
in my
fail.
lifetime.
Grandma, why
Just
are you doing this to
remember
us?
to leave offerings regularly.
Grandma!
Okay, I will.
Good girl. Now, you'd better get to work on writing your first incantation.
Okay. Hooray. So. Okay. We can't have Tiny Toads climb the railing outside until we have fixed it. Just lean against it and it wobbles. Oh no! Okay, I will let her know. She'll be very disappointed. She does love to climb that. Nothing for you to worry about, she says, dripping with foreshadowing. I mean, like, literally, I like it. Oh. I'm so tired and I want to keep playing. Like, I think I might have to, I'm gonna go and head in for the night. I wanted to get through the, like, basically, like, the tutorial, like, the introduction, like, the first chapter, basically, to, like, the point where I've done my first incantation. But I have to go to sleep. My meds are finally working, which is great, but it just means I'm sleepy. I'm just a sleepy bean. And so, so we made it through at least our first week, so that feels good. I'm probably going to be playing more of this. I think I might play it more as, like, a daytime lurky, like, while folks work kind of game to stream, just because, there is so much story, and, like, which is so nice because then there's voice acting and everything along with it, but it's also,
Time
harder
for
to, like,
bed.
talk about other stuff because I'm, like, so into it. Oh. I'm just like, okay, now what? Now what? Am I lost again? I'm lost again. Okay, going to bed. And now it's Monday again. But yes, yay for meds working. Yay that I'm, like, sleepy at, like, normal human hours. It's very good. Okay. I had to pause. So, does it just save every night? I'm scared. It hasn't said that it's not saving. I'm going to assume it's there. Yes, okay. Perfect. Very good, very good. Oh my goodness. Okay. Oh, so much fun. Thank you guys for hanging out this evening. I started a little bit later than I wanted, but I really, really like it a lot. I could see how it would be really, really fun on the Switch too, because like I can imagine just laying in bed in the same way I did with Animal Crossing, right? You just lay in bed and play forever. And so I've been wondering where we might want to go for sleepy sleeps, because like I need to be done gaming. Oh yay, thank you for the hugs. But yeah, and so I think I'm done gaming, but I might go like lay down in bed and maybe play some Oregon Trail or something. And so I probably will be in the Discord just for the little bit before falling asleep. And so if anybody wants to watch me try really hard not to, but end up murdering all of my friends, that's the place to do it. Oh, let's see. Who do we want to go see? Is anyone else playing this? Because thinking. Someone else has today, or tonight anyway. But I'm thinking maybe. Oh, thank you for putting all those raid messages in. That's perfect. Let's see. I think let's go ahead and maybe go for some Sims time. Christy's doing a Big Brother style series in her Sims game, so I think that sounds very fun. So we'll go and say hi to Christy's couch, and I think, can I find the right button to push? Maybe I will. Yes. Oh my goodness. But yeah, thank you guys so much. I just really appreciate you all, and like been busy, but it's been good, and I feel like today's the first day I felt more like myself. So that's been really nice. And yeah, please take care of yourselves, get some rest. I'll see you soon. Bye.